My mother's shoulders sank when the man in the suit called her the help. His voice cut through the polished lobby of Vertex Innovations, sharp as the glass walls around us. I stood 6 steps behind her, clutching my frayed backpack, my sneakers silent on the marble floor. She did not flinch, did not look up, but I saw the tremble in her fingers as she gripped her cleaning cart. I was 8, invisible to men like him, but I swore then, in the hollow of my chest, that I would make them see me. The lobby hummed with morning chaos. Men in ties tapped tablets, their heels clicking like impatient clocks. Women in blazers murmured into earpieces, their voices low and urgent. I sat on a bench in the corner, legs swinging, my notebook open on my lap. My pencil scratched across the page, tracing a circuit I had seen in a broken radio last week. The lines curled like rivers, each path a puzzle I could solve if I stared long enough. My mother disappeared behind the service elevator, her cart rattling. I did not wave. She knew I would be here, same as every day, sketching in silence. The air smelled of lemon polish and static. I flipped to a new page, my pencil sketching a motherboard that could talk to phones without wires. I had seen something like it on a forbidden website, late at night when my mother thought I was asleep. The idea clung to me, a spark I could not shake. My fingers moved faster, numbers and symbols spilling out like a secret code. The world faded, the heels, the murmurs, the click of briefcases. It was just me and the page, the logic unfolding. Then the lights flickered. A single dim, like a breath held too long. I paused, pencil hovering. The screens lining the lobby walls blinked to black, all at once, like eyes shutting. Murmurs turned to voices, voices to shouts. A man near the reception desk slammed his tablet down, his face red. "What do you mean we are locked out?" he barked into his earpiece. A woman in a gray suit sprinted across the floor, muttering about a failed remote command. Phones lit up, screens glowing in panicked hands. Someone cursed, the word sharp and raw. I sat still, my notebook open. The word breach hung in the air, heavy as smoke. I knew not to move. The moment you got noticed, people remembered to send you away. So I watched, my eyes wide, my breath shallow. Men near the elevators argued, their words sharp with blame. "Kernel override," one said. "Malware vector," another whispered. I knew that term. Malware. I had read about it in a borrowed book, seen it simulated on a cracked laptop. My fingers tightened around my pencil. The big screen above the reception desk stayed black. A young man with messy hair and a too-big blazer paced by the window, his phone pressed to his ear. "He will kill us," he muttered. "This is the biggest client presentation of the year. We are dead." I scribbled client presentation next to my sketch. It felt important, like a key. The receptionist said something about rebooting local servers, no change. Another man mentioned pinging external DNS, still locked. I tapped my pencil, my mind racing. They were guessing, flailing. They did not know where the failure began. I did. The thought hit me like a spark, sharp and dangerous. I turned to a fresh page, my pencil moving before I could stop it. "Isolate the breach point," I wrote. "Internal or external. Check traffic signatures for anomalies." I was not sure I could fix it, but I was sure of one thing. They could not. These adults, with their badges and suits, were lost. I had seen it before when my cousin Liam tried to plug a broken drive into our old TV and nearly fried it. I had fixed it in minutes. No one watching, no one teaching. Now here I was again in a room full of people with all the tools, all the power, and no map. My heart pounded, a mix of dread and clarity. I looked at my notes, the symbols forming a blueprint in reverse. The breach was not random. It was elegant, deliberate. Someone had frozen the system, not destroyed it. The structure was still there, waiting to be found. I tightened my grip on the pencil, my breath steadying. I had not meant to be here today, but now it felt like I was supposed to be. A man's voice cut through my thoughts. "This cannot be happening today." "Not today." I glanced up. He stood by the reception desk, his face pale. I narrowed my eyes. What was today? I listened closer, catching fragments. Locked out. No backups. Client metrics. The pieces clicked. This was targeted. I wrote faster, my pencil scratching. "Socket overflow loop," I jotted. It was a guess, but not a wild one. I had seen it in a simulation once, late at night, on a keyboard balanced on my knees. I did not mean to speak. The words slipped out, soft as a whisper. "Have you checked the socket overflow loop?" The room paused. Heads turned. A man snorted, his laugh sharp. "What did she say?" Another rolled his eyes. "Jesus, who let a kid in here?" My cheeks burned. I had broken my rule. Stay invisible. I stepped back, my notebook clutched to my chest, ready to vanish. But one person did not laugh. A young man, maybe 20, stood near the glass wall. His badge read Ethan. His eyes met mine, not with pity or scorn, but with something else. Curiosity. He tilted his head like he was weighing my words. Before I could slip away, a shadow loomed. A security guard, broad and stern, stepped toward me, his radio crackling. "You cannot be here, kid," he said, his voice flat. My heart lurched. I saw my mother's face, her panic if they sent me home. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady. "Wait, she said something that makes sense." The guard hesitated, his hand on his radio. Ethan looked at me, his eyes sharp. "Say it again," he said. I swallowed, my voice barely a whisper. "The socket overflow loop. It might be the entry point." The guard's radio crackled again. He glanced at Ethan, then back at me. The room was still, the air thick with tension. I felt their eyes, heavy and judging. My fingers trembled, but I held my notebook tighter. I was not guessing. I was remembering. And as the guard took another step toward me, I knew I had seconds to prove it, or be erased from this place forever. The guard's boots squeaked on the marble floor, each step a hammer in my chest. I clutched my notebook, its edges digging into my palms, and glanced at Ethan. His eyes held mine, steady, like he saw something I could not. "Give her a chance," he said, his voice cutting through the lobby's chaos. The guard paused, his hand hovering over his radio. A woman in a gray suit, her badge glinting, snorted. "We are wasting time," she said, but Ethan did not flinch. He pointed to the glass-walled room where screens flashed red. "Nobody in there has a better idea." The guard's jaw tightened. He muttered something into his radio, then stepped back, just enough to let me breathe. Ethan turned to me, his voice low. "Come on, show them." My legs felt like water, but I followed him, my sneakers silent against the hum of panicked voices. The glass room smelled of coffee and static, its air thick with tension. Engineers crowded around terminals, their fingers frantic on keyboards, screens spitting rejection codes. A man with thinning hair, his badge reading IT lead, cursed under his breath. "Level 4 encryption loop." "Who builds this garbage?" Ethan pulled out a chair by a terminal, its screen a maze of locked prompts. "Here," he said, his voice soft but firm. "It is too high for you." "Stand on it." I nodded, my throat tight, and climbed onto the chair, my backpack heavy on my shoulders. The keyboard was cold under my fingers, the screen's red warnings pulsing like a heartbeat. I stared for 10 seconds, not moving, not typing. My mind traced the code's surface, feeling its shape. I had seen this before, not this exact system, but its bones. Late nights, on a cracked laptop, I had pulled apart simulations, pieced them back together. This was no different. I typed a single command, slow, deliberate. The screen blinked, a prompt flickering open. A murmur rippled through the room. The IT lead glanced over, his phone forgotten in his hand. "What was that?" he muttered. I did not answer. My fingers moved faster now, navigating the shell interface. The breach was not brute force. It was personal, designed to slip inside like a shadow. I saw it in the code's rhythm, its loops curling like my sketches. My heart thudded, not from fear, but from recognition. This was not random chaos. It was a story written by someone who thought like me. The room's noise faded. I leaned closer, the screen's glow sharp in my eyes. A fragment of syntax caught me. A variable name, obscure, one I had used once in a notebook years ago when I was 6, wiring a broken radio to hum again. My breath hitched. It was not mine, not exactly, but it was close, like a cousin. I remembered a night at my cousin Liam's apartment, the internet cafe's flickering lights, a forum thread titled Digital Phantoms, a file dump, no replies, just code that sang to me. I had copied it by hand, tweaked it, made it mine. This code was its echo, evolved but unmistakable. My fingers froze. The hacker was not a stranger. They were like me, alone, self-taught, hungry for patterns. Their code was not angry, not frantic. It was patient, precise, a challenge left for someone who could read it. My stomach twisted. If someone like me could build this, could choose destruction, what did that say about the fire in my own head? I had always thought my gift made me different, good, but what if it made me dangerous? Ethan's voice broke through, soft, close. "Leah, what is it?" He leaned over my shoulder, his badge brushing the desk. I did not look up. "I know this," I whispered. "The code, it is like mine." He blinked, his breath catching. "You mean a group?" I shook my head, my voice barely audible. "No, someone like me." He did not speak, did not fill the silence with empty words. He just watched, his eyes sharp, like he understood the weight of what I said. I forced my hands to move again, slower now, tracing the code's path. Each line was a step deeper into the hacker's mind, their logic a mirror of my own. I saw their traps, decoy payloads, recursive loops disguised as critical files. But I knew their tricks, because I had played them too, in my head, in my notebooks. I typed, my fingers steady, bypassing a lockout layer. The screen shifted, a new prompt opening. Someone gasped. The IT lead stepped closer, his voice low. She found the admin shell. Another engineer, his glasses fogged, muttered, "That should not be visible without authentication." Ethan nodded, his voice calm. She authenticated, manually. The room's tension shifted, no longer helpless but stunned. I barely noticed. My mind was in the code, following the hacker's trail. They had not just locked the system, they had woven themselves into it, their grudge a thread in every line. I saw it now, clear as my own sketches. This was not about ruin, it was about being seen. A shadow fell across the desk. I glanced up, my heart lurching. A man stood in the doorway, his suit sharp, his eyes sharper. His badge was simple, no title, just a name. Michael Grant. The room stilled, voices fading. He did not speak, but his gaze pinned me, heavy, unreadable. The IT lead straightened, his voice tight. "Sir, she is just—" Michael raised a hand, silencing him. His eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low, like a blade wrapped in silk. I swallowed, my mouth dry. "Fixing it," I said, my voice small but steady. His brow lifted, just a fraction, And you think you can? I nodded, not trusting my words. He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the desk. "Show me," he said. My fingers trembled, but I typed, the code unfolding under my hands. The room watched, silent, as I moved deeper, the hacker's mirror reflecting back at me. I was not just solving a puzzle. I was answering a call. But as I bypassed another layer, a new fear bloomed. The code was too familiar, too close. Had I written something like this in my notebooks, in my dreams? Could I have been the one to break this place if the world had pushed me too far? The thought chilled me, sharp as glass. I hesitated, my hands hovering over the keys. Ethan noticed, his voice soft. "Leah?" I looked at him, my eyes wide. "What if I am like them?" I whispered. His face softened, but before he could answer, Michael's voice cut through. "Keep going," he said, not a request, but a command. I nodded, my heart pounding, and turned back to the screen. The code waited, patient, daring me to follow. And as I typed, I felt the hacker's shadow closer than ever, their challenge burning in my chest. The terminal's hum filled my ears, a steady pulse against the silence of the glass room. My fingers danced across the keyboard, each keystroke a step deeper into the hacker's maze. The code was not just a barrier, it was a story, written in loops and traps, a language only someone like me could read. I saw it now, clear as the sketches in my notebook. This was not chaos. It was a challenge, a whisper from someone who knew the system's bones as well as I did. My heart thudded, not from fear, but from the weight of recognition. They were like me, and that truth was a blade in my chest. I leaned closer, the screen's red glow sharp in my eyes. The code curled like my drawings, its logic a river with hidden currents. I traced a recursive loop, disguised as a system file, and bypassed it with a command I had learned from a broken radio's wiring. The screen blinked, a new layer opening. A murmur rippled through the room, but I barely heard it. My mind was in the code, following the hacker's trail. They had not just locked Vertex Innovations, they had woven their anger into its core, each line a thread of their story. I saw their traps, decoy payloads, decision trees that mimicked normal behavior. But I knew their tricks, because I had dreamed them too, alone in my room, my pencil scratching out puzzles no one else saw. My breath slowed, my hand steady. I was not just solving a problem, I was deciphering a mind. The hacker's code was patient, deliberate, like the way I fixed things piece by piece until the whole sang. But there was something else, a shadow in the syntax. It was personal, not random. They had chosen this day, this client presentation, to strike. Why? My fingers paused, hovering over the keys. I thought of the forum thread I had found years ago, Digital Phantoms. Its words burned into my memory. It is not about breaking in. It is about becoming the door. I had copied that code by hand, tweaked it, made it mine. This breach was its echo, grown sharp and cold. The hacker had walked my path, but they had chosen destruction. Could I have done the same? The thought clawed at me. I sat back, my hands trembling, the chair creaking under me. I had always believed my gift, seeing systems as stories, made me different, good. But what if it was a fire that could burn? I thought of my mother, her tired hands, her quiet pride. If the world pushed me too far, could I turn my sketches into weapons? The idea was a weight, heavy and cold, settling in my stomach. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat, daring me to keep going. Ethan's voice broke through, soft, close. "Leah, you okay?" He stood beside me, his badge glinting in the screen's light. His eyes searched mine, not with doubt, but with concern. I swallowed, my voice small. "It is too much like me," I said. The code, the way they think. He did not answer right away, just tilted his head like he was weighing my words. You are not them, he said finally, his voice quiet but firm. You are here, fixing this. They chose to break it. His words were a lifeline, thin but strong. I nodded, my throat tight, and turned back to the screen. I typed again, slower now, my fingers cautious. The code unfolded, revealing another layer of encryption, this one knotted like a puzzle box. I saw the hacker's signature in its design, elegant, almost beautiful, but sharp with intent. I bypassed a trap, my command slipping through a gap they had left, maybe on purpose. The screen shifted, a log file opening, its data corrupted but not gone. I scanned it, my eyes narrowing. There was a pattern, a rhythm in the errors. I had seen it before in my own experiments, when I pushed a circuit too far and watched it fail in a way that told me how to fix it. My heart stuttered. This was not just a breach, it was a test. A shadow moved behind me. I glanced up, my pulse spiking. Michael Grant stood closer now, his arms folded, his eyes locked on the screen. He did not speak, but his presence was heavy, like a storm waiting to break. His face was unreadable, but his gaze flickered, not to the code, but to me. I saw something in his eyes, doubt maybe, or something deeper like a memory he did not want. I looked away, my hands moving faster, as if I could outrun his stare. The room was quiet now, the engineers watching, their skepticism fading into something else. Awe, perhaps, or unease. I bypassed another layer, my fingers flying. The system's heartbeat flickered, a faint green line on a secondary screen. Someone gasped, a sharp intake of breath. The IT lead stepped closer, his voice low. She isolated the second cluster, he muttered. Another engineer, her glasses fogged, leaned in. That is impossible. We tried that for hours. I did not look at them. My mind was in the code, following the hacker's path. They had left breadcrumbs, not mistakes, but invitations. Each trap was a question. Can you see me? I could. And that scared me more than anything. The glass door hissed open. I flinched, my fingers pausing. 2 security guards stood there, their radios crackling. My heart lurched. Michael's voice cut through, sharp and cold. Not now, he said, without turning. The guards hesitated, one glancing at the other, then stepped back, the door closing with a soft thud. I exhaled, my hands trembling, and typed again. The code was deeper now, its layers like a forest, dark and tangled. I saw the hacker's intent, clear as my own sketches. They wanted to be found, but only by someone who could match them. Someone like me. I thought of my nights alone, my mother asleep, my pencil scratching out circuits in the dark. I had learned because I had to, because the world did not see me. The hacker had learned the same way, I was sure of it. But they had turned their gift into a blade, carving their pain into Vertex's systems. Why? I wanted to know, needed to know, but the question was a distraction. I pushed it down, my fingers moving faster, bypassing another lockout. The green line on the screen grew stronger, steadying. The room's tension shifted, no longer frantic but electric, like the air before lightning. Ethan leaned closer, his voice a whisper. You are doing it, Leah. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I was close, so close to unraveling the breach's core. But the closer I got, the louder the hacker's shadow grew. Their code was a mirror, reflecting my own thoughts, my own logic. I saw myself in its lines, and it terrified me. What if I was one choice away from being them? The thought was a splinter, sharp and deep. I pushed it away, focusing on the screen, the code, the puzzle. Michael's voice broke through, low, measured. Who are you? He asked, not to the room, but to me. I froze, my hands hovering over the keys. My heart pounded, a drum in my chest. I looked up, meeting his eyes. They were not angry, not dismissive, but searching, like he saw something he could not name. I opened my mouth, but no words came. How could I explain who I was when I barely understood it myself? I was a girl with a notebook, a pencil, a hunger for patterns. But I was also something else, something this room was starting to see. I turned back to the screen, my fingers trembling. The code waited, its final layer a locked door. I typed, my breath shallow, knowing that whatever lay beyond would change everything. Not just for Vertex, but for me. The terminal's glow burned my eyes, but I could not look away. The final layer of the hacker's code stared back, a locked door with no key, only a riddle. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling, not from doubt, but from the weight of what I was about to do. The code was a mirror, reflecting my own logic, my own hunger for patterns. I saw the hacker's mind in every line, their challenge clear. Only someone like me can open this. My heart pounded, a drum in my chest as I typed the command I knew would break the system free. The screen blinked, and a green pulse spread across the central display, steady, alive. The room gasped, a collective breath, but I felt no relief, only exposure, like a shadow burned away by light. I leaned back, my hands falling to my lap, the chair creaking under me. The system's heartbeat was back, its logs scrolling clean, no longer choked by the hacker's traps. The engineers stood frozen, their faces a mix of disbelief and awe. The IT lead, his glasses fogged, muttered, "She did it. She actually did it." Ethan's hand rested lightly on my shoulder, his touch warm, grounding. "Leah," he whispered, his voice thick. "You saved us." I nodded, my throat tight, but my eyes stayed on the screen. I was not invisible anymore, and that scared me more than the code ever had. The glass room felt smaller now, the air heavy with eyes. I clutched my notebook, its edges worn, a shield against their stares. The hacker's shadow lingered in my mind, their code a question I could not answer. Why did you choose this? I had followed their trail, matched their logic, but I had chosen to fix, not destroy. Yet the line between us felt thin, fragile, like a wire stretched too tight. I thought of my mother, her tired hands, her quiet faith in me. I had done this for her, for us, but also for myself, to prove I was not them. A shadow loomed across the desk. Michael Grant stood closer, his suit sharp, his eyes sharper. He did not speak, but his gaze was a weight, pinning me to the chair. The room stilled, the murmurs fading. His face was unreadable, but his hands clenched at his sides betrayed him. He was not just watching the screen. He was watching me like I was a puzzle he could not solve. I looked away, my pulse spiking, and saw the security guards still by the door, their radios silent but their presence a threat. I had saved the system, but I was still a child, out of place, a risk. Michael's voice broke the silence, low, measured. "How?" he asked, not to the room but to me. I swallowed, my mouth dry. "I saw it," I said, my voice small but steady. "The code, it was like mine." His brow lifted just a fraction. "Yours," he said, the word sharp like a blade testing its edge. I nodded, my fingers tightening around my notebook. I learned it. Alone. From broken things. His eyes flickered, not with doubt, but with something deeper, like a memory he could not shake. He stepped back, his gaze lingering, and I felt the air shift, like a storm passing. The IT lead cleared his throat, his voice hesitant. "Sir, we need to verify the logs, ensure no residual damage." Michael raised a hand, silencing him, his eyes still on me. "Do it," he said, but he did not move. The engineers scrambled, their keyboards clacking, their voices low and urgent. I sat still, my heart slowing, the adrenaline fading. I had done it, but I felt no triumph, only a hollow ache. I was seen now, but what did that mean? Would they thank me, then send me back to the lobby, to my bench, to my silence? The door hissed open, and my mother's voice cut through, sharp with fear. "Leah?" She stood in the doorway, her cleaning cart abandoned, her eyes wide. A guard followed, his hand on her arm, guiding her like she was trespassing. My heart lurched. I slid off the chair, my sneakers hitting the floor, and ran to her, my notebook clutched to my chest. "I am okay," I said, my voice breaking. Her hands gripped my shoulders, her fingers trembling. "What did you do?" she whispered, her eyes searching mine, then flicking to Michael. "Is she in trouble?" Michael stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "No trouble," he said. "She fixed it." My mother's breath caught, her hands tightening on me. "Fixed what?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Michael gestured to the screens, now alive with data, their green pulses steady. "Everything," he said. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but she did not cry. She pulled me close, her arms a shield, and I felt her heartbeat fast and fierce against my cheek. I looked up, meeting Michael's gaze. He was not smiling, not praising, but his eyes held something new, respect maybe, or curiosity. "You are not supposed to be here," he said, his voice low, almost gentle. "But you are." I nodded, not trusting my words. He turned to the IT lead, his tone sharp. "Pull the security footage. I want to see exactly what she did." The IT lead nodded, his fingers already moving on his tablet. Michael looked back at me, his eyes narrowing. "Stay," he said, not a request, but a command. "We are not done." My mother's grip tightened, her voice a whisper. "Leah, what is happening?" I shook my head, my throat tight. "I do not know," I said, but my eyes drifted to the screen, to the code I had unraveled. I had saved Vertex, but I had also opened a door, one I could not close. The hacker's shadow was still there, their challenge unanswered. And now, I was not just a girl with a notebook. I was someone they saw, someone they wanted to understand. Ethan stepped closer, his voice soft. "You did good, Leah," he said, his smile small but real. I nodded, my heart still racing, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the code, the hacker's logic, their mirror of me. I thought of the security footage Michael had ordered, the cameras that had watched me type. I had been so focused, I had not noticed them. But now, a chill ran through me. What if someone else had been watching too? Someone who knew the code as well as I did, someone waiting for me to answer their call. I looked at the screens, their green pulses steady, but my stomach twisted. The hacker had left their mark, not just in the system, but in me. And as Michael turned away, his shoes clicking on the marble, I felt a new weight settle in my chest. I had won this battle, but the war was not over. Someone out there was watching, and they knew my name. The boardroom smelled of lemon polish and old coffee, its long table gleaming under fluorescent lights. I sat in a blue chair at the far end, my sneakers barely touching the floor, my notebook open on my lap. My mother sat beside me, her hands knotted in her lap, her eyes darting to the glass walls where shadows moved. The air was heavy, not with panic like yesterday, but with something sharper, expectation. They had called me back, not with fanfare, but with a quiet summons, like I was no longer just a child. My heart thudded, a steady rhythm, as I waited for them to decide what I was. Michael Grant entered first, his suit crisp, his eyes sharp. He did not smile, But his gaze lingered on me, not with doubt, but with a question I could not read. Ethan followed, his badge glinting, a notebook tucked under his arm. He offered me a small nod, his lips curving just enough to ease the knot in my chest. A woman with cropped hair and square glasses came next, her steps brisk, her tablet glowing in her hand. Others filed in, their faces unfamiliar, their badges marking them as important. They sat, their chairs creaking, and the room fell silent, the kind of silence that waits for something to break. The woman spoke first, her voice steady, urgent. "How did you do it?" she asked, her eyes locked on mine. I blinked, my fingers curling around my pencil. "Which part?" I said, my voice small but clear. A few chuckles rippled through the room, not mocking but surprised, like they had not expected me to answer. Ethan leaned forward, his voice calm. "The override," he said. "The breach tracking, the subshell nesting, all of it." I swallowed, my throat tight. Their eyes were heavy, not judging but searching, like they wanted to see inside my head. I looked down at my notebook, its pages worn, filled with circuits and symbols only I understood. "I do not know how to explain it with words," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. A silence followed, not awkward but open, like they were waiting for more. I reached into my backpack, pulled out my notebook, and flipped to a blank page. "But I can show you," I said. My pencil scratched softly, the sound loud in the quiet room. I did not look up as I drew, not code, not diagrams, but something in between, circuits that flowed like rivers, loops that curled like branches, patterns that danced like weather maps. I shaded with quick precision, connecting lines to symbols, building the framework I saw in my mind when I faced the code. It was not just logic, it was a story, my way of seeing the world. After several minutes, I turned the page and slid it across the table, my fingers trembling. No one moved. Then Michael reached out, his hands steady, and pulled the page toward him. He studied it in silence, turning it sideways, his eyes scanning not like an engineer, but like someone looking for something deeper. I watched him, my breath shallow, not for praise, but because this was the first time I had shown anyone my mind. He did not speak, but his shoulders shifted, a subtle change, like he saw something he had not expected. The others leaned in, their eyes flicking between the page and me. Ethan's lips parted, his voice soft. "That is how you think," he said, not a question, but a realization. I nodded, my throat tight. Michael tapped the page once, his voice low. "This loop here," he said, pointing to a curling line. "What do you call it?" I blinked, surprised. "It does not have a name," I said. "It is just how I keep the structure from collapsing when the problem folds on itself." He nodded, his eyes meeting mine. "That is exactly what happened yesterday, is it not?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." He slid the page back to me, his voice firm. "Keep this. Do not change it." I tucked it into my notebook, my heart pounding. For the first time, I felt not just seen, but heard, like I had spoken a language they could not ignore. The room was quiet, but it was not empty. It was full, solid, like the silence after a storm. Later, at home, the apartment smelled of burnt toast and soldering flux. I sat cross-legged on the floor, a tray of wires and resistors spread before me, Liam beside me, his hands clumsy with a breadboard. "If it is too weak," I said, pointing to a capacitor, "the charge bleeds out before it can flip the signal." He groaned, his hair falling into his eyes. "That is not fair," he said. "I do not even know what resistance is." I smiled, just a little. "Then learn," I said. "That is how I did it." He muttered something but kept working, his fingers steadier now. I watched him, my mind drifting to the boardroom, to Michael's eyes, to the page he had held like it mattered. The apartment was small, its walls cracked, its table wobbling under a pile of scavenged parts. Radios, calculators, a broken DVD player. Every surface had a purpose, every object a story. I had built this world from scraps, taught myself from silence. But now, I was not just the girl in the corner. I was someone they had called back, someone they had listened to. The thought was a spark, warm but sharp, like holding a live wire. I wondered what it meant to be seen, not just for what I could do, but for who I was. A knock at the door startled me. My mother opened it, her voice tight. "Mr. Grant?" I looked up, my heart lurching. Michael stood in the doorway, his suit out of place against the peeling paint. My mother's hands trembled, her eyes wide. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Michael shook his head, his voice calm. "I just came to see her world," he said, his eyes finding mine. "Nothing bad." My mother stepped aside, her fingers gripping the broom, and he stepped in, his shoes loud on the creaking floor. I did not move, but my eyes followed him. He crouched beside me, his knees creaking, and looked at the tray of parts. "Can you fix this one?" I asked, holding out a cracked radio, its wires tangled. He took it, his fingers slow, like he was remembering something. "I used to," he said, his voice low. "A long time ago." I handed him a screwdriver, my voice steady. "Then try." He smiled, just a fraction, and pried the back open, his hands clumsy but deliberate. I watched, my breath shallow as he worked, the room quiet except for Liam's muttering and the hum of the stove. My mother hovered, her eyes darting between us, but I felt no fear. This was my world, my language. And Michael was here, not as a suit, but as someone who wanted to understand. I leaned closer, pointing to a wire. "That one is loose," I said. He nodded, adjusting it, his hands steadier now. And then, as he shifted the radio, I saw something. A faint scratch in the casing, a pattern of lines, deliberate like code etched in metal. My heart stuttered. It was not random. It was a message, hidden, waiting for someone like me to find. I froze, my eyes locked on the scratches. The hacker's shadow was back, closer than ever, their challenge carved into the world I thought was mine. My hands trembled, but I did not speak. Michael did not notice, his focus on the radio, but I felt the weight of what I had found. Someone was watching, waiting, and they knew I was here. The boardroom's glass walls gleamed, reflecting the morning light, but I felt no warmth. I sat in the same blue chair, my notebook open on the table, its pages worn from my fingers. My mother sat beside me, her purse clutched tight, her eyes fixed on Michael Grant. He stood at the head of the table, his suit sharp, his hands steady, but his gaze was different today. Softer, like he saw more than the girl who had cracked his system. The air was thick, not with tension, but with possibility, a weight I could not name. My heart thudded, steady but loud, as I waited for him to speak. He cleared his throat, his voice low, deliberate. "You changed the way we see things here," he said, his eyes on me. "Not just systems, but people, talent. The way we define who is qualified to lead." I blinked, my fingers curling around my pencil. His words were heavy, not praise, but something deeper, like he was confessing. "You walked into chaos and did not flinch," he continued. "You did not wait for permission. You solved it." My mother's breath caught, her hands trembling in her lap. I glanced at her, her eyes shining, but I did not move. I felt exposed, like the code I had unraveled had stripped me bare. Michael paused, his gaze steady. "I have made some changes," he said. "There is a scholarship in your name, Leah, and a mentorship program, real mentorship, one-on-one. You will have access to labs, hardware, courses, anything you need to keep growing." My mother let out a sound, half gasp, half sob, her hand covering her mouth. I felt her joy, sharp and raw, but my own heart was quiet, processing his words like lines of code. A scholarship. A lab. A place. I tilted my head, filtering the input, searching for the catch. "You will be on site," Michael added, his voice firm. "Not just as a visitor, but as part of the team, if you want that." The room was silent, the kind of silence that waits for an answer. I looked at my mother, her tears falling now, then back at Michael. His eyes held no pity, only expectation, like he believed I could choose. I swallowed, my voice small but clear. "Will I still be allowed to break things?" The question was not planned, but it was honest, born from the core of me. Breaking things was how I learned, how I found the patterns others missed. If this offer chained me to rules, I was not sure I wanted it. Michael stared, his lips parting, caught between surprise and something else. Then, slowly, he smiled. Not a boardroom smile, but a real one, raw and rare. "Yes," he said, his voice warm. "That is how we find out what is inside." My mother's breath broke, her tears falling freely now, her hand reaching for mine. I let her fingers curl around my own, her warmth grounding me. The room felt full, not with people, but with something solid, like the silence after a circuit hums to life. I nodded, my heart pounding, not with fear, but with clarity. I would come. I would build. But I would do it my way. Later, alone in my room, I sat cross-legged on the floor, the cracked radio from Michael's visit in my lap. The apartment was quiet, my mother asleep, Liam snoring on the mattress in the corner. The air smelled of solder and burnt toast, familiar, safe. I traced the scratches on the radio's casing, the hidden message I had found yesterday. They were not random, a sequence of lines short and long like a code etched in metal. My heart stuttered, the hacker's shadow close again. I had not told anyone, not Michael, not Ethan. This was mine to unravel. I opened my notebook, flipping to a blank page and copied the scratches, my pencil steady. The pattern was familiar, like the syntax I had seen in the breach. I closed my eyes, my mind tracing the forum thread from years ago, digital phantoms, its words burned into me. It is not about breaking in. It is about becoming the door. The scratches were a key, a challenge left for me. I decoded them, line by line, my breath shallow. It was not a virus, not a trap, but a message. You found me. Now what? My stomach twisted. The hacker knew I had followed their trail, matched their logic. They were testing me, daring me to answer. I sat back, the radio heavy in my hands. I could ignore it, walk away, focus on the lab, the scholarship. But the message was a spark, sharp and alive, pulling me toward the dark. I thought of contacting them, finding the forum, typing a reply. What would I say? I am not you. I fixed what you broke. Or would I ask why? Seek the story behind their anger. The thought was a wire, live and dangerous. I pushed it down, closing the notebook, but the question lingered. A shadow I could not shake. The next morning I rode the bus with my mother, our silence comfortable, the city blurring past. At Vertex, Michael met us in his office, not the boardroom, the space smaller, warmer, with a drawing, mine, framed on his desk. He sat across from me, his tie loosened, his eyes searching. "I was like you once," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Hungry for answers, fixing things no one thought could be fixed." I blinked, surprised. He leaned forward, his hands clasped. "There was a girl long ago at an orphanage. She fixed radios like you. She disappeared and I never asked why. I buried it, but you brought it back." His words were a weight, not heavy, but grounding. I saw the boy he had been, alone, like me, finding meaning in broken things. I nodded, my throat tight. I do not want to disappear, I said, my voice steady. He smiled, small but real. You will not, he said. Not here. The moment was quiet, but it was enough. I felt seen, not just for my code, but for my hunger, my fire. That evening, after the lab lights dimmed and the engineers left, I slipped into Michael's office, my notebook tucked under my arm. He was gone, at a dinner with investors, the city glowing beyond his window. I placed a note on his desk, a torn scrap of paper, folded twice. In small, careful writing, I wrote 7 words. Thank you for seeing me, really seeing. I turned to leave, my sneakers silent, but paused at the door, my heart racing. The hacker's message burned in my mind, their challenge closer than ever. I felt their eyes, not in the room, but in the code, in the scratches, in the shadows I could not outrun. They were here, somewhere, and they were waiting. The lab at Vertex Innovations smelled of solder and static, a hum that felt like home. I sat in my corner, a small desk dwarfed by an enormous monitor, its screen alive with lines of code. Above it, someone had scrawled Leah's brain in black marker, the letters uneven but bold. I did not erase it. My notebook lay open, its pages thick with sketches, circuits curling like rivers, loops branching like trees. I was no longer the girl in the lobby, invisible, sketching in silence. I was here, building, seen. My heart beat steady, not with fear but with purpose. Yet a shadow lingered, a question I could not shake. Each morning, I rode the bus with my mother, our shoulders brushing, our silence warm. She no longer worked nights, her cleaning shifts moved to days, her badge now reading supervisor. She tucked my access card into a drawer each evening, her fingers gentle, like it was something sacred. My hoodie was patched at the elbows, my sneakers worn, but my badge, white with red trim, Leah M in bold, was new, a key to a world I had only dreamed of. At Vertex, engineers brought me coffee, interns asked my advice, and department heads lingered by my desk, curious. I did not perform. I worked, same as always, my pencil scratching, my mind chasing patterns. Today, I traced a data funnel's logic, its flow uneven, like a river clogged with debris. I rewrote its protocol, my fingers flying across the keyboard, the solution clear in my head before I typed. An engineer, her glasses fogged, peered over my shoulder. That is brilliant, she said, her voice soft. I nodded, my lips pressed tight, and kept working. Recognition was heavy, not unwelcome, but unfamiliar, like a coat too big for my frame. I thought of the hacker's message, etched in the radio's casing. You found me. Now what? Their shadow followed me, a spark I could not douse, daring me to answer. At home, the apartment was unchanged. Cracked tiles, wobbling table, a bucket of dishes by the sink. I scavenged parts from the alley, broken toys and radios, their insides a puzzle I could solve. Liam sat beside me, his hands steadier now, testing a circuit I had taught him. It works, he said, his grin wide, a diode glowing in his palm. I smiled, small but real. Good, I said. Keep going. My mother placed tea beside me, her hand brushing my shoulder, and I felt her pride, quiet but fierce. This was my world, built from scraps, and it was enough. But the hacker's challenge gnawed at me. Late at night, when the apartment slept, I opened my notebook, flipping to the page where I had copied the radio's scratches. I traced them, my pencil steady, decoding their rhythm. They were not just a message, they were a signature, a mind like mine, self-taught, unseen. I had not contacted them, not yet, but their question echoed, now what? I wanted to know why they had struck Vertex, what anger had turned their gift into a blade. I wanted to prove I was different, that my fire built, not burned. But the line between us felt thin, fragile, like a wire stretched too tight. At Vertex, Michael had changed, though he hid it well. His office was the same, polished desk, color-coded calendar, but my drawing, the one I had slid across the boardroom table, sat framed by his monitor, its pencil smudges untouched. He walked to my desk sometimes, no reason given, his shoes clicking on the tile. "What are you working on?" he would ask, his voice low like he was remembering. I would show him. A logic error in a security patch, a redesign for a data cluster. And he would nod, his eyes lingering, not on the screen, but on me. We did not speak of the girl from his orphanage, but I felt her, a ghost in his gaze. Yesterday, he had called a meeting, his voice sharp through the intercom. The boardroom was full, suits and badges, their eyes on him. "Vertex is changing," he said, his hands clasped. "No more age limits, no more GPA gates. Talent does not need a resume." He paused, his gaze finding mine, brief but steady. "And our firewall," he added, "is now called Leah's Shield." A murmur rippled through the room, heads turning to me. I looked down, my cheeks warm, my pencil tight in my hand. It was not pride I felt, but weight, like I had carved a mark in a world that had not seen me before. That evening, I stayed late, the lab dim, its lights humming low. I sat at my desk, my notebook open, a new sketch half finished, a circuit to store power without a battery, for emergencies. My mind drifted to the hacker, their message a spark in the dark. I flipped to a blank page, my pencil hovering, and froze. There, in my own handwriting, was a fragment I had not written, a sequence of symbols, short and long, like the radio's scratches. My heart lurched. I had not added this. I checked my bag, my desk, the floor. Nothing was touched, but the page stared back, undeniable. I sat back, my hands trembling, the lab's hum loud in my ears. The hacker was here, closer than I had thought, their challenge no longer a whisper, but a shout. They had slipped into my world, left their mark in my notebook, knowing I would find it. My breath was shallow, my mind racing. Were they watching, waiting for my answer? I thought of Michael's drawing, framed on his desk, of my mother's pride, of Liam's glowing diode. I had built this place, this life, from silence. I would not let their shadow take it. I closed the notebook, my fingers steady, and stood, my sneakers silent on the tile. The city glowed beyond the lab's windows, its lights like stars I could reach. I dreamed of them sometimes, not as distant fires, but as patterns, puzzles I could solve. I belonged here, not because of a badge or a desk, but because I had chosen to build, to fix, to see. The hacker's challenge was not done, but neither was I. I slipped my notebook into my bag, my heart steady, and stepped into the hall, the lab's hum fading behind me. Somewhere, in the dark, they were waiting, and I was ready.